In this lesson, we'll explore how we can pin those loose accessories we have to our bound mesh. As stated before, we're going to be using the rivet script to pin these different objects to our character's mesh. That works pretty well. Now, a thing to keep in mind about the rivet script, if you were to go ahead and prepare your character for rendering, you'll probably want to smooth him, right? Well, when you smooth them and then apply the rivet script, what's going to happen is if you want to go back to a lower division of your character, you may get an error saying that basically the rivet script is having a little issue because of your points changing, being that you've went from a different vert count. So you have a few options to correct a problem like that. And one is to simply disregard that message, because what's going to happen is once you go right back to your smooth mesh, okay, your smooth division level, those rivets are going to pop right back and everything's going to be fine. So you can disregard the message, or you can set up a quick low proxy cage on this character by either making geometry or extracting faces after you have duplicated the certain part of the character that you would like to set up the low proxy with, mainly where the rivets will be applied. But you could go ahead and extract the faces with separated, checked on in the options, and then parent those pieces to the bones so that they'll deform just as you would like them to for your low proxy. So you have a few options there, and then what you could always do is even set up a visibility switch, as what we've been doing, to tie in the low proxy as well as the smooth mesh right into that switch, so you could switch back and forth. So those are a few options that you have, but I'm just going to go ahead and apply the rivet so you can see how it works. Okay, again, so that's going to be something we want to keep in mind. So being that we'd probably want to apply our rivet with this mesh smooth, we can select it and go to smooth mesh. Alright, so now that that's done, what I like to do from here, and what we'll do is go ahead and check out the process of connecting one of these buttons, and then from there we'll be able to get the procedure down and quickly go through and do the rest that we need to set up before we get to our keys and flashlight. We're actually going to be able to use that rivet to set these up the way we'd like them to for this character. So this is going to be really cool. So let's go ahead and start work, and we could start by working on this button here. Okay, so we're going to want a few things. We're not only going to want it to follow with our mesh, but we're also going to want it to scale correctly too. And if we want to, we could even have the rivet scale, but that's not necessary. But we can even set that up, which we will. So we'll select that button. We make a layer. We just add it to the layer, and we could add the rest of our objects that we'll have pinned to that same layer, so we don't have a huge amount of layers here. But now we can template it, and what this does is allows us to see through it, the object, to apply our rivet. So now that we have our, or let's make sure we have our shirt selected, we'll then hit F8 to go into our component mode, right click, and go to edges. And then we want to select our edges. We want to select our edges that will correspond with our button. So that's one here and the other right next to it, or right adjacent to it. And then from there, the rivet will be applied right in the center of that object, which is exactly what we want. So we now go to our rivet script. Hit select, and there it is. Great. I like to scale it down from here, 0.05, so it's not so large, so we can see it, and give it a name. So for the name, we can go ahead and just make our button again selectable, come out of component mode. Alright, so that's button E, as we know. So we can now select our rivet, call this RVs for rivet, underscore, shirt, abbreviate button, and then capital E so we know what it is, 01. Alright, great. And we're also going to want our outliner open so we can see where we want these rivets to go afterwards. Alright, so now we have the rivet there. So for the button to follow, we just select our rivet followed by the button and do a parent constraint. So now with this done, what this gives us is when we select our chest, notice how that button now will follow just as we need it to as our chest is moving around. So that's really cool. So I'm just gonna went ahead and undid those moves. Back to our bind pose. Okay, so what's next? We have that connected. of course we want our buttons to scale. So we can always go into our character node and make sure that they're parented directly underneath our viewed transforms category, underneath the character scale, not where they're currently at character geo. Since they're not bound, they're not going to be scaling until we put them underneath the proper group node. So with the button selected, we control click our viewed transforms and hit P. And if you notice now, when we select our scale and move that around, let's even scale it down, notice that the button stays exactly where it needs to be. Now you may also notice, of course, the locator for the rivet is not scaling. So in order to set that up, we can first go ahead and deselect, make a group for it, okay, to stay organized. We'll call the group grp underscore rivets, so we know what's in the group, 01. We take the group and we put it directly underneath our character, or underneath our extras. We could put it right in there. Okay, and then we'll even turn on extras so we can see what's happening. So when we turn on extras, now we take our rivet, parent it right underneath our group that we've made. So that's our group rivet. So we'll select the rivet, control click our group, P. Great. Now we just need to make it scale now. Of course, there's no scale applied because it's not under our scale. But rather than applying it under our scale, which we don't want to do, we instead do a connection by a constraint. So we select the rivet. Okay, we can open up the group if we like, or we can select it within our viewport. Okay, so we're going to want that constrained to our character scale, as we've discussed. So when doing constraints, of course, you select the constraint first, or the driver of the constraint, that is, followed by the driven object, which is our rivet. So we can shift select that in our viewport. And with that now done, we go up to constrain, scale constraint, and we check out the options. I'll reset them. So we just want to make sure that maintain offset is checked on so that everything will move fine. Now with this done, if we were to now go to our scale and scale our character down, notice that locator for our rivet is scaling just as we needed to with the button. So again, you don't need to have the rivet scale if you don't want to, but that's the option you have if you like. So we'll go ahead and make sure that everything scales as we've done with this button. So that is the process of setting everything up. Okay, and in the end, we still have a clean group node and everything is organized the way we'd like it to be. So being that that's the case, we'll stop the lesson here and work on pinning the rest of our objects prior to getting to setting up our keys as well as our flashlight.